Humanity had always looked up at the night sky with a sense of wonder and curiosity. For centuries, people on Earth had gazed at the stars, imagining what might lie beyond their own small planet. The twinkling lights that stretched across the darkness above were more than just distant suns. They were possibilities, mysteries, and dreams waiting to be uncovered. Scientists, astronomers, and explorers alike spent their lives trying to understand the cosmos, not just for knowledge but for the hope that one day, humans might meet life beyond their world. From primitive telescopes to the most advanced space observatories, every generation had pushed further, driven by the same unyielding curiosity. This was humanity's nature, to explore, to question, and to reach for what others might consider unreachable. In the modern age, humanity had grown into a technologically advanced species, capable of reaching far beyond the boundaries of Earth. Space travel was no longer just the dream of a few astronauts. It had become an integral part of human civilization. Governments, private companies, and research institutions were all invested in the grand vision of exploring and colonizing distant planets. Probes and satellites were sent to survey planets and moons, mapping terrain, atmosphere, and potential resources. Mankind's signals, the radio waves, the broadcasts, the interstellar messages were constantly traveling into the depths of space, carrying information about humanity's culture, knowledge, and existence. It was a bold statement to the universe. Humans were here, they were intelligent, and they were eager to learn and grow in a distant sector of the galaxy. Far from the nearest human colony, a highly advanced alien civilization noticed these transmissions. These beings were unlike humans in almost every imaginable way. Their perception of time, energy, and technology surpassed anything humanity had yet imagined. They were patient, calculating, and curious about everything that existed beyond their own worlds. When they intercepted humanity's transmissions, they were intrigued. At first, they watched quietly, studying the patterns, the intentions, and the nature of this new species. They observed how humans communicated with one another, how they displayed emotions, and how they approached science and technology. Humans were fascinating to them because of their unpredictable creativity, their determination, and their ability to innovate even under extreme circumstances. From the aliens' perspective, humans were a species of paradoxes. On one hand, they were capable of incredible feats, designing machines that could travel millions of kilometers through space and decode the mysteries of atoms and molecules. On the other hand, they were emotional, impulsive, and sometimes reckless. The aliens saw potential in humanity, but they also sensed danger. They noted that humans' curiosity was accompanied by ambition, a relentless drive to grow, expand, and conquer. While the aliens themselves had mastered restraint and subtlety, humanity's nature was explosive, energetic, and unpredictable. The alien scientists discussed among themselves, "This species is remarkable, but we must watch carefully. Their curiosity could lead them to wisdom or to disaster." Meanwhile, humans continued their exploration without fully understanding the consequences of their actions. For humans, the universe was a vast frontier, a place of opportunity. They did not yet fully grasp the existence of other intelligent civilizations, and the idea that some species could be observing them went largely unnoticed. Human society was filled with optimism, competition, and ambition. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop faster propulsion systems, more powerful telescopes, and more efficient ways to explore distant planets. Governments funded missions to reach the stars, driven not only by scientific curiosity but by the desire for influence and prestige. Each new discovery of a distant planet or unusual celestial phenomenon reinforced humanity's sense that they were destined to explore and perhaps even colonize other worlds. From the alien perspective, humanity's activities were both impressive and concerning. They noticed that humans were expanding rapidly, sending probes and exploratory ships farther than any other known species had ever dared. The aliens could see the signals sent from Earth and its colonies, and they could calculate the trajectory of human expansion. While humans were unaware, the aliens debated how to respond. Should they make contact? Should they warn humanity about the potential consequences of their ambition? Or should they remain hidden, merely observing, waiting to see what this species would do next? After careful consideration, they decided that observation alone would not suffice. Humanity's expansion was too rapid, and the potential for conflict or ecological disruption in the cosmos was increasing. The aliens considered sending warnings to humans. They believed that humanity's curiosity, though powerful, could lead to reckless behavior that might threaten both themselves and the broader galaxy. To the aliens, the universe was a delicate balance of ecosystems, planets, and civilizations. One species acting without caution could easily destabilize the intricate networks of life and energy that existed across the stars. Humanity, in its drive to explore and exploit, did not yet understand these complexities. They saw planets as resources, stars as destinations, and the unknown as a challenge to conquer. The aliens knew that a direct approach might be necessary to prevent catastrophic consequences, but they hoped that communication and warnings would be enough to guide humanity toward caution. Despite their concern, the aliens initially remained cautious. They've studied human behavior through remote observation, analyzing patterns, tendencies, and potential reactions to different types of messages. They tried to anticipate how humans would respond to contact, warnings, or demonstrations of power. Their assessments were complicated by humanity's unpredictability. Humans often acted in ways that were entirely logical to them individually but chaotic from an external perspective. The aliens realized that humanity's combination of intelligence and impulsiveness could either lead to remarkable achievements or catastrophic mistakes. They knew that any attempt to guide humans would require careful strategy, patience, and subtlety. Meanwhile, on Earth, humans continued to dream, explore, and innovate. Entire industries developed around the promise of interstellar travel, from advanced propulsion technologies to artificial intelligence designed for deep space navigation. Schools and universities trained a new generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers with the hope that one day humanity would walk among the stars. The media celebrated every success: the launch of new probes, the discovery of potentially habitable planets, the detection of unusual signals from distant corners of space. Humanity's confidence grew with each achievement, reinforcing the belief that they were masters of their own destiny and that the universe was theirs to explore. The aliens watched all of this with a mix of curiosity and concern. They noticed how humans celebrated triumphs, ignored potential dangers, and often acted without considering the broader consequences of their actions. From afar, the aliens could see the patterns of expansion, which planets humans were interested in, which resources they sought, and how quickly they were moving through space. The aliens debated the ethics of intervention. Should they reveal themselves and risk frightening or provoking humans? Should they continue observing and hope that humans would eventually develop the wisdom to act responsibly? Or should they prepare to take more drastic measures if humanity continued on its reckless path? Ultimately, the aliens concluded that humanity's curiosity and ambition were defining traits of the species. These traits were both their greatest strength and their greatest vulnerability. Humanity's ability to imagine, innovate, and explore had allowed them to reach heights no other species had achieved, but their lack of understanding and restraint made them dangerous not only to themselves but potentially to others in the galaxy. The aliens realized that early intervention, in the form of warnings or guidance, might be necessary to prevent disaster. They began to prepare messages designed to communicate both the wonder of the universe and the responsibilities that came with exploring it. They hoped that humans would listen, understand, and act with caution. But humans, busy with their own ambitions, often missed subtle signals. They misinterpreted natural phenomena as random events, unexplained signals as opportunities to decode advanced technology, and every warning as a puzzle or challenge rather than a plea. Humanity's excitement about discovery sometimes blinded them to the possibility that intelligent civilizations were already observing them. Even the most cautious scientists debated whether any warnings were real or relevant. Some believed that any contact with aliens would be harmless, while others feared it might be a threat, but no consensus emerged. Humanity's divisions, ambitions, and curiosity all combined to make them largely unaware of the growing concern of the alien civilization watching them. That as humanity continued to push forward, the aliens realized that patience alone might not be enough. While humans had the potential for wisdom, they were also impulsive, aggressive, and often blind to the consequences of their actions. The aliens considered the long-term implications. If humanity continued to expand without guidance, they could disrupt ecosystems, provoke conflicts with other civilizations, or even threaten themselves through unchecked technological advancement. It was clear that careful observation might soon need to be replaced by direct action or clear warnings. Humanity's fate, the aliens decided, was hanging in a delicate balance between curiosity, ambition, and recklessness. Humanity, full of potential but unaware of the observers, continued to explore the stars with hope, ambition, and confidence. The aliens, wise and patient yet growing concerned, prepared themselves for the possibility that humanity might not heed the subtle lessons of caution and restraint. Both species were on a collision course shaped by curiosity, ambition, and the vast, unpredictable universe that stretched between them. This period, full of observation, fascination, and cautious concern, marked the beginning of a story that would test the limits of understanding, power, and responsibility on a galactic scale. The aliens had observed humanity for a long time, noting how the species explored, expanded, and experimented with technologies that could reach the stars. From their perspective, humans were intelligent and creative, yet reckless in ways that were difficult to predict. After careful study and deliberation, the aliens decided it was necessary to send a warning message that would communicate their concern and advise humans to exercise caution. They were not looking for conflict at this stage. They were attempting to prevent a disaster that could arise if humanity's expansion continued unchecked. The aliens hoped that the humans, with all their curiosity and intellect, would understand the gravity of the situation and change their behavior. The method of communication was subtle but unmistakable to anyone who could understand it. The aliens sent signals into space, embedding complex codes, visual simulations, and symbolic messages designed to be interpreted by intelligent life. These signals contained information about the fragility of certain ecosystems, the dangers of overexploitation of planetary resources, and warnings about the consequences of expansion without understanding. It was a gentle attempt at guidance, an offer to teach humans how to navigate the galaxy responsibly. The aliens wanted to help humanity avoid mistakes that had already cost other civilizations dearly. They hoped the humans' curiosity, combined with their intellect, would be enough to recognize the warnings as serious and to act accordingly. Yet, humans were preoccupied. Across Earth, society was undergoing rapid technological and social transformation. Entire industries, governments, and research institutions were focused on space exploration. From launching satellites to designing interstellar probes, humanity was consumed by the thrill of discovery and the promise of progress. In this environment, subtle alien signals were easily overlooked or misinterpreted. Scientists detected strange transmissions and attempted to decode them, but most lacked the context to understand their true significance. In some cases, the signals were dismissed as natural cosmic noise, glitches in equipment, or random anomalies. Others saw them as opportunities, puzzles to be solved, challenges to be met, not warnings to be heeded. Human politics played a role as well. Nations and corporate entities vied for control over space resources, the prestige of first discoveries, and the strategic advantage of advanced technologies. Even if a few individuals recognized the seriousness of the alien signals, their voices were often drowned out by competition and ambition. Leaders debated the legitimacy of the warnings, with some arguing that humanity had nothing to fear from distant life, while others feared that acknowledging the signals might lead to panic or loss of influence. This division meant that even when the alien messages were partially understood, they failed to inspire the necessary caution or change in behavior. Humanity's momentum toward expansion remained unstoppable. Colonization of distant planets had already begun. Human settlements were established on moons and planets that had previously been considered uninhabitable. Advanced life support systems, artificial ecosystems, and terraforming technologies allowed humans to survive and even thrive in environments that would have been impossible a few generations earlier. The sense of achievement was intoxicating. Each successful colony became proof of human ingenuity, fueling confidence and ambition. From the human perspective, there seemed to be no limit to what could be achieved with technology, determination, and the collective effort of their species. Meanwhile, the aliens observed the changes unfolding across the galaxy with growing concern. They noted that humans were not just exploring, they were altering environments, extracting resources, and leaving permanent marks on the planets they visited. The subtle balance of these alien worlds, some of which had existed for millions of years without disruption, was being threatened. Small mistakes, minor interventions, or thoughtless actions could have cascading effects, potentially destroying delicate ecosystems. The aliens, who had learned from experience the importance of caution and balance, saw the dangers clearly. Humanity, brilliant but impulsive, did not. The aliens decided to escalate their efforts to communicate. They've transmitted more precise messages, using mathematical patterns, visual representations, and simulations to show humans the potential consequences of their actions. One simulation depicted a planet's atmosphere collapsing under excessive resource extraction. Another showed a once thriving ecosystem reduced to lifeless rock after decades of interference. The aliens' messages were designed to evoke understanding, not fear. They wanted humans to recognize that the universe was not merely a playground for experimentation, but a complex web of life and energy that required respect and care. Despite these efforts, humanity largely misinterpreted the warnings. Some scientists saw the messages as opportunities to study advanced alien technology. Engineers attempted to decode the signals for practical applications, unaware that the core purpose of the communication was cautionary. Military analysts debated whether the transmissions represented a threat, while others dismissed them entirely as cosmic interference. Even those who suspected that intelligent life was trying to communicate often lacked the context or patience to interpret the warnings correctly. Curiosity, ambition, and a tendency to prioritize immediate gain over long-term safety blinded humans to the seriousness of the situation. On Earth, the media occasionally reported strange signals from space, describing them as anomalies, puzzles, or mysteries. The public's fascination grew, but often in a superficial way. People were excited about the possibility of intelligent life elsewhere, but few appreciated the potential dangers. To most, the alien warnings were distant and abstract, easily ignored in favor of more immediate concerns: politics, economics, technology, and daily life. Humanity's focus remained on exploration, expansion, and discovery, rather than reflection and caution. As humans continued to expand, their activities began to leave noticeable impacts on alien worlds. Remote observation by the aliens revealed that human colonies and mining operations were altering planetary landscapes, changing atmospheres, and disrupting ecological systems. Even seemingly minor actions, such as extracting minerals or introducing new technologies, had unintended consequences that reverberated through local ecosystems. The aliens, who had initially hoped that humans would notice these effects and adjust their behavior, realized that humanity's curiosity was coupled with a stubborn resistance to warnings. Their patience began to wear thin. The alien leadership debated what steps to take next. They were aware that humanity had the intelligence to understand complex concepts, but they also knew that humans often acted impulsively, guided by ambition and emotion. The aliens considered several options: continuing to send subtle warnings, attempting direct communication with humans in person, or taking preventive measures to protect their worlds. Each choice carried risks. Direct contact could provoke fear, aggression, or misunderstanding, while intervention without warning could be seen as hostile. The aliens wanted to avoid conflict if possible, but they also recognized that inaction could lead to irreversible damage. Amid this tension, humans remained largely unaware of the danger they were courting. They celebrated technological milestones, such as successfully sending manned missions to distant planets, establishing new colonies, and experimenting with advanced artificial intelligence. Each success reinforced their belief that humanity was destined to explore and conquer the stars. Ambition, pride, and a sense of invincibility blinded humans to the subtle but growing presence of alien observers. Even when anomalies occurred, strange signals, unexpected interference, or unexplained cosmic events, humans often interpreted them as problems to be solved rather than warnings to be heeded. Despite humanity's ignorance, the aliens remained vigilant. They continued to monitor human activity, noting patterns of expansion, resource consumption, and technological development. They began to understand which aspects of human behavior were most likely to lead to mistakes and which individuals or groups might be capable of heeding their warnings. The aliens hoped that through careful observation and persistent communication, they could guide humanity toward responsible exploration before it was too late. They recognized that humans had the potential for remarkable achievements, but they also saw the risk that unchecked ambition could lead to catastrophe. The contrast between the humans' perception and reality could not have been starker. Humans saw themselves as explorers, innovators, and masters of the cosmos. They celebrated every milestone as proof of their intelligence and capability. The aliens, on the other hand, saw a species capable of great brilliance but vulnerable to hubris, impulsiveness, and a lack of foresight. From the aliens' perspective, humanity's curiosity was a double-edged sword. It could lead to discovery and progress, but it could also provoke conflict, destruction, and suffering on a galactic scale. As human activity intensified, small signals of environmental disruption became noticeable. Alien systems designed to detect subtle changes in planetary ecosystems registered imbalances caused by human colonization and mining. The aliens attempted to amplify their warnings, sending increasingly vivid demonstrations of potential harm. They created holographic simulations, energy pulses, and controlled cosmic phenomena to communicate the fragility of ecosystems and the consequences of reckless expansion. These measures were carefully designed to capture attention without causing panic or immediate danger. Yet humans, driven by curiosity and ambition, largely misinterpreted these signals. Engineers tried to reverse engineer the phenomena. Scientists studied them as natural anomalies, and politicians debated their strategic significance. Few realized that the aliens were attempting to communicate caution rather than opportunity. Humanity's enthusiasm for progress, combined with a lack of understanding of alien intent, that meant that the warnings were either ignored, misunderstood, or exploited for personal and political gain. The aliens understood that their warnings might not be enough. Humanity's curiosity was insatiable, and their ambition drove them to take risks that the aliens could not prevent without intervention. The species' capacity for innovation, combined with their tendency to act without fully considering long-term consequences, made them a potential threat to themselves and to other civilizations. The aliens began to consider more direct forms of communication, including demonstrations of power and unmistakable signals designed to force humans to recognize the seriousness of the situation. Even as the aliens planned their next steps, humans continued to expand. New colonies were established, interstellar travel became faster and more reliable, and human presence in the galaxy grew exponentially. The species was confident, optimistic, and largely unaware of the alien observation and warnings. From the aliens' perspective, humanity was standing at a crossroads. One path led to wisdom, caution, and responsible exploration, while the other led to recklessness, conflict, and potential disaster. Time was becoming a critical factor. The longer humanity ignored the warnings, the closer they came to making irreversible mistakes. Through all this, the aliens maintained hope. They believed that humans had the capacity to understand, learn, and change. They had observed the species' ingenuity, resilience, and capacity for empathy, and they hoped that these traits would eventually prevail. But hope alone was not enough. The aliens knew that action would be required to ensure the survival of their worlds and the responsible expansion of humanity into the galaxy. They began to prepare for the possibility that more forceful measures might be necessary if humans continued to ignore their warnings. Humans, full of ambition and curiosity, were unknowingly venturing into dangerous territory. The aliens, patient and wise but increasingly concerned, were preparing to take steps to prevent irreversible damage. Both species were now on a path of inevitable contact, shaped by human ambition, alien foresight, and the vast unpredictable expanse of the universe. What seemed like simple curiosity and exploration on the human side had become a critical issue on a galactic scale. The consequences of ignoring the warnings were beginning to loom larger, and the stage was set for the events that would follow. The tension between humans and the aliens grew steadily as humanity's activities in space became increasingly bold and intrusive. What had begun as distant observation had evolved into a series of subtle warnings, signals, and demonstrations by the aliens, all aimed at guiding humans toward caution. The aliens had hoped that humanity's intelligence and curiosity would allow them to recognize these warnings for what they were. Yet, despite the elaborate messages, humans largely continued to act as though they were alone in the universe, focusing instead on their own ambitions, discoveries, and technological achievements. What the aliens had hoped would be subtle guidance was increasingly becoming a desperate attempt to prevent catastrophe. Humanity had established thriving colonies on planets and moons far from Earth. These colonies were marvels of technology, each a testament to human ingenuity and persistence. Entire communities lived under artificial domes, sustained by advanced life support systems, artificial ecosystems, and energy sources capable of maintaining life in hostile environments. Resources were extracted from these planets with efficiency and determination. As humans sought to fuel the rapid expansion of their civilization, every successful mission added to the belief that humans were unstoppable, capable of conquering the stars with skill, intelligence, and courage. The aliens, observing from afar, saw a troubling pattern. Human expansion was accelerating, and with it, the potential for mistakes that could have catastrophic consequences. Subtle disruptions in planetary ecosystems, minor but noticeable fluctuations in atmospheres, and the extraction of rare resources. All these activities indicated that humans were acting without fully understanding the delicate balance of the worlds they were entering. From the aliens' perspective, humans were brilliant, capable of achieving incredible feats, but dangerously reckless. They were playing with forces they did not yet comprehend, and the consequences could ripple far beyond individual planets. To address this, the aliens attempted alternative forms of communication. They tried to create signals that were impossible to ignore, complex mathematical codes, visual simulations of destroyed ecosystems, and energy pulses designed to mimic natural phenomena with a clear underlying message. These demonstrations were intended to provoke reflection rather than fear, to encourage humans to consider the consequences of their actions before they caused irreversible damage. The aliens hoped that by making the risks tangible, humans would slow down, take stock of their expansion, and act with greater responsibility. Yet humans, driven by ambition and curiosity, largely misinterpreted these efforts. Engineers and scientists often viewed the signals as problems to solve, mysteries to decode, or opportunities to reverse engineer advanced technology. They saw the aliens' careful warnings not as guidance but as puzzles or challenges to be overcome. Governments and corporations debated the meaning of the signals, but many dismissed them entirely, attributing them to natural cosmic anomalies or glitches in observation equipment. Even those humans who recognized the potential intelligence behind the messages were divided on how to respond. Some believed contact could be friendly, others feared hostility, and most continued their expansion without significant caution. As human colonies grew, the impact on alien worlds became increasingly visible. Remote observation systems revealed subtle but cumulative environmental changes caused by human activity. Planetary atmospheres were altered by resource extraction and industrial activity. Local ecosystems suffered from the introduction of foreign materials and technologies, and the careful balance of these distant worlds began to destabilize. The aliens, who had long maintained a delicate balance on their own planets, understood the risks immediately. For them, even minor disruptions could escalate into full-scale ecological collapse over time. Humanity, however, was unaware of the damage it was causing, or if aware, largely indifferent to the consequences. Meanwhile, humans continued to debate the possibility of intelligent life beyond Earth. Scientists, politicians, and strategists were divided. Some believed any alien life would be too primitive to notice or threaten humanity, while others feared the unknown. These debates often distracted humans from the more pressing reality that their actions were already being observed by a civilization far more advanced than their own. Curiosity, ambition, and the desire for prestige often outweighed caution, ensuring that humanity continued on its path of aggressive exploration and expansion. The aliens, recognizing that patience alone might no longer suffice, began to consider stronger measures. Their earlier attempts at subtle warnings and indirect communication had largely failed to slow humanity's expansion or encourage reflection. While humans were capable of understanding complex concepts, their impulsiveness and desire for rapid progress made it unlikely that they would voluntarily heed cautionary advice. The aliens debated whether it was time to escalate their response in a more tangible and undeniable way, creating events that humans could not misinterpret or ignore. One of the key challenges for the aliens was understanding human psychology. Humans were intelligent, creative, and resourceful, but also prone to emotional decision-making, pride, and hubris. Even when presented with clear evidence of potential danger, humans often rationalized or ignored it in favor of immediate gain, personal ambition, or collective pride. That aliens knew that any attempt to influence humans would require more than just information. It would require a demonstration of consequences that could not be rationalized away. In short, they had to show humans that the universe was not merely a playground for experimentation, but a complex system where reckless actions could have devastating effects. Despite these concerns, humanity continued to expand without hesitation. New colonies were established on planets with challenging environments, each one a triumph of engineering, persistence, and human determination. Terraforming projects were launched to make inhospitable worlds habitable, and mining operations extracted valuable minerals and resources to fuel the growing demands of Earth and its colonies. Every success reinforced humanity's belief in its own invincibility, further blinding the species to the possibility that their actions were being closely monitored by a civilization capable of far greater technological and strategic prowess. The aliens observed specific human behaviors that were particularly concerning. Humans often acted without considering long-term consequences, their decisions influenced by competition, pride, and the desire for rapid achievement. Colonies were developed with little regard for ecological balance, and resources were exploited aggressively. Even minor mistakes, from the aliens' perspective, had the potential to trigger cascading effects across entire planetary systems. The aliens realized that humanity's combination of brilliance and recklessness created a situation that could quickly spiral out of control if not addressed. As the aliens deliberated on their next steps, they continued to monitor humans closely, analyzing which patterns of behavior were most likely to cause harm and which individuals or groups might be capable of recognizing the seriousness of the situation. They identified scientists and leaders who displayed caution, critical thinking, and awareness of broader consequences. These individuals represented humanity's potential to act responsibly, and the aliens hoped they could influence decision-making at a critical juncture. Yet, they also knew that the majority of humans were unlikely to change course voluntarily, making more direct interventions increasingly likely. At the same time, humanity's technological advancement was accelerating. Faster than light travel, advanced energy systems, and increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence allowed humans to operate across vast distances with unprecedented efficiency. Communication between colonies was nearly instantaneous, and trade, research, and exploration networks spanned the galaxy. From the human perspective, these achievements were proof of mastery over space, time, and technology. They were confident that no force, known or unknown, could challenge their progress. From the alien perspective, however, humanity's confidence was dangerously misplaced. The species' rapid expansion, combined with limited understanding of galactic ecosystems and advanced civilizations, created a high-risk scenario. Minor miscalculations, environmental disruption, or overreach could provoke unintended consequences with far-reaching effects. The aliens realized that if humans were to continue on this path, a critical point would soon be reached, one where subtle warnings and guidance would no longer suffice. Immediate, decisive action might be required to prevent irreversible damage. Meanwhile, human society remained largely unaware of the growing tension. Media reports focused on scientific breakthroughs, space exploration milestones, and the economic and political implications of new colonies. The possibility of intelligent observers or warnings from advanced civilizations was largely speculative, debated only in academic or fringe circles. Most humans were captivated by their own achievements, confident that the universe was a place to explore, experiment, and dominate. Even anomalies, unexplained signals, and unusual cosmic events were often treated as opportunities for research or advancement rather than potential warnings. As humanity expanded, small but measurable disruptions to alien worlds became increasingly apparent. Planetary atmospheres were subtly altered, ecosystems disrupted, and natural balances shifted. The aliens' monitoring systems tracked these changes in detail, documenting patterns and predicting potential consequences. They attempted to make these consequences clear to humans through signals, simulations, and indirect demonstrations. Yet, humans continued to focus on immediate progress rather than long-term caution. Curiosity, ambition, and the desire to achieve first and fastest overshadowed the subtle warnings embedded in the alien communications. The aliens realized that time was becoming a critical factor. Humanity was approaching a point where mistakes could no longer be easily corrected. The species' rapid expansion, combined with a lack of awareness of the broader galactic environment, meant that intervention might soon be necessary to prevent irreversible damage. Subtle guidance and indirect warnings had failed to elicit the desired response. Humanity had shown intelligence, creativity, and ingenuity, but also stubbornness, impulsiveness, and an inability to fully grasp the consequences of their actions. Recognizing this, the aliens began planning a series of measures that would be impossible for humans to ignore. These measures were not intended to provoke conflict unnecessarily, but to ensure that humans understood the seriousness of the situation. Demonstrations of power, unmistakable signals, and controlled events were considered as tools to communicate a single message. The universe was not a playground, and reckless expansion carried consequences. The aliens understood that humans were capable of learning, adapting, and achieving greatness, but only if they were forced to confront the reality of their actions. At the same time, humans remained preoccupied with their own triumphs. Colonies continued to grow, resources were extracted at unprecedented rates, and interstellar travel became routine. The species' collective pride and ambition blinded them to the possibility that they were being monitored and guided by a more advanced civilization. Even when anomalies occurred, humans tended to interpret them as challenges to overcome rather than warnings to heed. This combination of intelligence, ambition, and stubbornness made humanity both remarkable and dangerous in the eyes of the aliens. Humanity's curiosity, ambition, and technological advancement continued unchecked, while the aliens struggled to communicate the gravity of the situation. Subtle warnings had failed, misinterpreted by humans as puzzles, opportunities, or anomalies. The stage was set for a critical turning point, where the consequences of continued expansion and reckless behavior could no longer be mitigated by observation alone. Both species were now on a path of inevitable confrontation, shaped by human ambition, alien foresight, and the vast, unpredictable nature of the universe. Humanity's recklessness was approaching a breaking point, and the consequences of ignoring the warnings were becoming impossible to avoid. As humanity continued its rapid expansion into space, the tension that had been quietly simmering between humans and the aliens finally reached a critical point. For years, the aliens had observed, warned, and attempted subtle communication to prevent disaster. They had sent complex signals, visual simulations, and demonstrations of potential consequences. Yet humanity, driven by curiosity, ambition, and a sense of invincibility, had largely ignored these warnings. Engineers tried to decode the signals, scientists studied them as anomalies, and politicians debated their meaning, but the collective focus remained on expansion and achievement. The aliens realized that the time for patience and subtlety had ended. Humanity had pushed too far, acted too recklessly, and now the consequences of their disregard could no longer be avoided. The final warning from the aliens came in the form of a dramatic, undeniable demonstration of power. It was designed to be impossible to ignore. They selected a barren moon, far from inhabited planets, and carefully redirected a massive asteroid to approach it. The trajectory was controlled with precision, and the asteroid's impact created a spectacle visible from several human colonies. The explosion and resulting shockwaves reshaped the moon's surface, sending a vivid message: the universe was not a neutral playground, and the aliens were both aware and capable of intervention. For the aliens, it was a last attempt to communicate the seriousness of the situation without causing direct harm to humanity. However, humans reacted in ways that the aliens had anticipated but could not fully prevent. Many human scientists and engineers rushed to study the phenomenon, treating it as a rare opportunity to gain knowledge about advanced cosmic engineering. Media outlets broadcasted the event as a scientific marvel, emphasizing the technological implications rather than the warning it was intended to convey. Politicians debated whether the asteroid had been naturally deflected or engineered, while militaries quietly prepared contingencies in case of future events. Few humans recognized that the display was a message, a final attempt to prevent a disaster. Even those who suspected intelligence behind the event struggled to interpret its meaning as a serious warning rather than a puzzle or challenge. The aliens realized that subtlety had failed. Humanity's combination of ambition, ingenuity, and stubbornness had rendered indirect communication insufficient. They had attempted warnings through observation, signals, and demonstrations, yet humans continued their expansion with confidence and little regard for consequences. The species' curiosity, while admirable, had become dangerous. The aliens, patient and strategic, understood that a more decisive action was necessary to protect their worlds and ensure that humanity could not unwittingly trigger irreversible damage. This realization led the aliens to prepare for a coordinated strike. Unlike humans, whose responses were often impulsive and uncoordinated, the aliens operated with precision, strategy, and foresight. They identified the most critical human colonies, the locations of their fleets, and the nodes of their supply lines. Advanced surveillance allowed them to predict human movements, anticipate potential counteractions, and plan attacks that would neutralize threats without causing unnecessary collateral damage to areas of no strategic importance. Every detail was calculated to maximize effectiveness while minimizing risk to themselves. Meanwhile, humans remained largely oblivious to the growing danger. Colonies on distant planets were flourishing, each new settlement a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Terraforming projects transformed once hostile environments into habitable zones, Mining operations extracted essential minerals to fuel energy grids, industry, and transportation networks. Interstellar fleets maintained supply lines between colonies, ensuring that resources, technology, and personnel flowed smoothly across vast distances. Humanity's confidence soared. To them, the universe seemed vast but conquerable, full of opportunities and challenges that could be met with intelligence, technology, and courage. Yet beneath this veneer of control, cracks were forming. Some human scientists and military strategists began to notice anomalous signals, disturbances, and unexplained events that suggested an external intelligence was monitoring or even intervening. These individuals raised concerns, warning leaders that humans might not be alone and that unchecked expansion could provoke conflict. However, their voices were often dismissed or marginalized. The majority of humans continued to focus on exploration, resource extraction, and technological advancement. Curiosity and ambition had become an unrelenting force, blinding them to the potential consequences of ignoring warnings from beyond their understanding. As the aliens prepared for the decisive strike, they reflected on humanity's patterns. Humans were unpredictable, yet consistent in their ambition and disregard for caution. They acted quickly to solve problems, often ignoring long-term consequences. They celebrated achievement, innovation, and progress, rarely pausing to consider the broader impact of their actions. The aliens recognized that any delay or hesitation could result in humans reaching a point of no return, where intervention might be more destructive or impossible. A calculated, decisive action was the only way to ensure the protection of the aliens' worlds while also sending a lesson to humanity that could not be ignored. The strategy was executed with meticulous precision. Human fleets were drawn into carefully designed traps. Advanced alien technology allowed them to manipulate gravitational fields, redirect energy, and neutralize key human ships before they could respond effectively. Communication networks were disrupted, isolating colonies and preventing coordinated human countermeasures. Each move was calculated to minimize human casualties in non-critical areas while ensuring that the demonstration of power was undeniable. The aliens wanted humans to understand the seriousness of their actions without unnecessarily destroying the species entirely, at least not yet. Despite these measures, the human response was frantic. Colonies under attack scrambled to mobilize defense systems, while interstellar fleets attempted to regroup and counter the alien maneuvers. Communication was chaotic, with conflicting orders, misinterpreted signals, and confusion spreading rapidly. Human intelligence and ingenuity shone in moments of improvisation, as engineers and tacticians attempted creative solutions to counter the alien strikes. Yet, despite their best efforts, the aliens' superior technology, strategy, and foresight overwhelmed human defenses. The events unfolded with devastating efficiency, leaving humans shocked and unprepared for the scale of intervention. The aliens demonstrated not only technological superiority but also the consequences of unchecked ambition. Entire colonies that had ignored previous warnings were reduced to ash. Mining operations in terraform zones were destabilized. Ships caught in the traps were destroyed or incapacitated. The aliens' actions were precise and purposeful, designed to deliver a message that could not be rationalized away or ignored. Humanity, for the first time, faced the reality that their expansion and ambition carried serious risks and that ignoring warnings from a superior intelligence could have catastrophic consequences. In the chaos, some humans began to understand the gravity of the situation. Scientists, engineers, and leaders who had long suspected the presence of advanced extraterrestrial observers now witnessed the reality firsthand. The scale and precision of the alien intervention left no room for doubt. Humanity had misjudged the intentions, capabilities, and patience of a civilization far more advanced than their own. The realization was both shocking and humbling. Pride and ambition had driven them to this moment, but now survival required immediate reflection, cooperation, and adaptation. The aftermath of the strike was devastating yet instructive. Colonies were destroyed, fleets were scattered, and supply lines disrupted. Survivors faced the difficult task of understanding what had occurred, why it had occurred, and how to respond. Panic and fear rippled through human society, but so did a grudging respect for the intelligence, strategy, and power of the aliens. The demonstration had succeeded in its purpose. Humanity could no longer ignore the warnings. Their actions, previously celebrated as ingenuity and progress, had provoked a force that could not be reasoned with through curiosity or ambition alone. As humans struggled to regroup, the aliens maintained careful observation. They monitored the remaining colonies, fleets, and communication channels, ensuring that humanity had the opportunity to learn from the consequences rather than face complete annihilation. The aliens' actions were designed not just to punish but to teach. They wanted humans to recognize the importance of caution, foresight, and respect for forces beyond their understanding. The destructive events were a lesson in restraint and responsibility, a demonstration of the stakes involved in venturing too far without consideration. In human society, the impact was profound. News of the destruction spread rapidly across surviving colonies, sparking debates, fear, and introspection. Leaders were forced to reconsider strategies, scientists had to reevaluate priorities, and ordinary citizens confronted the reality that their civilization was not invincible. The events challenged fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe, the limits of technology, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. For many, it was a moment of awakening, a realization that the universe was far more complex, dangerous, and interconnected than previously imagined. Despite the devastation, humanity's survival instinct and ingenuity began to re-emerge. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to repair damaged infrastructure, restore communication networks, and develop defensive measures against future threats. Leaders convened councils to analyze the alien strategies, attempting to understand their technology, tactics, and objectives. While fear and uncertainty dominated, there was also a renewed determination to learn, adapt, and survive. Humanity's curiosity, once a source of reckless ambition, became a tool for understanding and recovery. The breaking point had fundamentally changed the dynamic between humans and the aliens. The species had been humbled, forced to confront the consequences of ignoring warnings. The aliens had demonstrated that they were not passive observers but active protectors of their worlds, capable of decisive and overwhelming action. Humanity had learned, painfully and vividly, that curiosity and ambition alone were not enough to ensure survival. Respect, caution, and understanding of forces beyond one's own capabilities were equally vital. A moment where humanity's trajectory was irrevocably altered. The species had been forced to reckon with its own limitations, the complexity of the universe, and the reality of a civilization far superior in knowledge and capability. The breaking point was not just a moment of destruction but also a catalyst for reflection, learning, and transformation. Humanity had been tested, and the lessons would shape the decisions, strategies, and values of the species for generations to come. The decisive strike and its aftermath were a stark reminder: in the vast, unpredictable universe, unchecked ambition carries consequences. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, confronted with the power and precision of a civilization capable of protecting its worlds with unerring strategy. The events of this phase would forever remain etched in human history as a lesson in humility, responsibility, and the need to heed warnings, no matter how subtle they may seem. For the aliens, it was a necessary action to safeguard their worlds and ensure that humanity would at last begin to recognize the stakes of their expansion. The breaking point had arrived, and the future of human exploration would never be the same. The consequences of humanity's recklessness and the aliens' decisive strike were devastating and immediate. Entire human colonies, once thriving with life, technology, and ambition, were reduced to ash and rubble. Cities that had taken decades to build were erased in a matter of hours, leaving nothing but barren landscapes and remnants of technology scattered across planetary surfaces. The destruction was not chaotic. It was precise and deliberate, a calculated display of power designed to teach a lesson that could not be ignored. Humans, for the first time in their interstellar expansion, were faced with the brutal reality of their vulnerability. They had been warned repeatedly, yet their ambition and curiosity had blinded them to the seriousness of the threats surrounding them. For survivors, the initial shock was overwhelming. People scrambled to understand the scale of the devastation, to locate loved ones, and to determine which colonies were still operational. Panic and confusion swept through the remaining human settlements. Communications were disrupted, fleets were scattered, and the once cohesive network of interstellar colonies was fractured. Humanity, accustomed to viewing itself as a master of technology and exploration, suddenly realized that intelligence and curiosity alone were insufficient when faced with a force far beyond their understanding. The aliens had demonstrated that they were not only observing but capable of swift, decisive, and overwhelming action. Amid the chaos, human leaders convened emergency councils to coordinate a response. Military strategists attempted to assess the aliens' capabilities, predict their next moves, and develop strategies to protect the remaining colonies. Scientists worked tirelessly to analyze the alien technology and understand the patterns of the strikes. Engineers and logistics specialists mobilized to repair damaged infrastructure and restore communication links. Despite the fear and confusion, humanity's inherent resilience and resourcefulness began to manifest. People adapted quickly, improvising solutions to problems that had once seemed insurmountable. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, human determination shone brightly. Though tempered now by the humbling experience of near annihilation, the scale of the devastation forced a fundamental reevaluation of humanity's approach to exploration and expansion. Colonists, engineers, and leaders alike began to recognize that unchecked ambition and curiosity carried real, tangible consequences. The destruction of key settlements highlighted the dangers of ignoring warnings and failing to consider the broader context of interstellar activity. Every surviving human faced the stark reality that their civilization had been fortunate to survive, and that any further recklessness could result in total annihilation. The aliens had delivered a message that was impossible to misinterpret. Humanity's actions had consequences far beyond their immediate comprehension. survivors also faced a profound emotional and psychological reckoning. Fear, grief, and guilt permeated human society. Families mourned the loss of loved ones. Entire communities grappled with the disappearance of friends and neighbors, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on leaders and decisions. The enormity of the alien response made humans question their assumptions about the universe, their place within it, and the limits of their own capabilities. Pride and ambition, once sources of motivation and inspiration, were replaced with caution, introspection, and a deep awareness of vulnerability. The emotional impact of this phase was as significant as the physical destruction, reshaping humanity's collective mindset in ways that would resonate for generations amid the chaos. Human intellect and ingenuity persisted. Scientists analyzed the aliens' strategy, noting patterns in their strikes, precision in their actions, and the logic behind the targeting of key colonies and fleets. Engineers and technicians worked to restore damaged systems, utilizing both traditional methods and innovative approaches to solve complex problems. Military planners reassessed defensive strategies, considering not only technological solutions but also diplomatic and strategic approaches to interacting with a civilization far more advanced than their own. Humanity, humbled but unbroken, began to recognize that survival depended on understanding, adaptation, and restraint as much as on curiosity and ambition. Communication among the survivors was a critical challenge. With major communication networks disrupted, isolated colonies faced the risk of becoming cut off entirely. Couriers, relay stations, and improvised communication arrays were deployed to reconnect the remaining settlements. Scientists and engineers collaborated across distances, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that had not been necessary before. The experience highlighted the fragility of human systems when faced with superior intelligence, but it also revealed the capacity of humanity to innovate and adapt under extreme pressure. The survivors began to realize that cooperation, caution, and shared knowledge were essential to weathering the crisis. The aliens, meanwhile, maintained a careful watch over the surviving human populations. Their goal was not the complete destruction of humanity but the enforcement of a lesson that could not be ignored. They monitored rebuilding efforts, expansion attempts, and technological developments, ensuring that humanity would not repeat the same mistakes. Their presence, both observed and inferred, became a constant factor in human strategic planning. The species now had to operate with the knowledge that a far superior intelligence was not only capable of intervention but willing to act decisively if humans again overstepped boundaries. This awareness fundamentally changed the calculus of exploration, colonization, and interstellar interaction. In the wake of destruction, leadership and governance structures were challenged. Some governments and corporate entities had been decimated, leaving gaps in authority and coordination. Communities were forced to establish new systems of leadership, often under the guidance of those who had demonstrated foresight, strategic thinking, or technical expertise during the crisis. The rebuilding process required not just physical reconstruction but the establishment of new norms, priorities, and strategies for ensuring survival. Humanity had to learn quickly that ambition without restraint was dangerous and that collective responsibility was essential for enduring in a universe filled with forces beyond comprehension. Psychological and cultural impact extended beyond immediate survival. Stories of the devastation, accounts of lost colonies, and descriptions of alien precision became central to human memory and identity. The events were not just a cautionary tale but a transformative experience, reshaping human values and priorities. Fear of repeating past mistakes became a guiding principle, tempering curiosity with caution and ambition with responsibility. Education systems incorporated these lessons, and historical records documented the events in painstaking detail, ensuring that future generations would understand the consequences of ignoring warnings and underestimating the power of forces beyond their control. Humanity also began to reconsider its approach to technology and exploration. The strikes had revealed vulnerabilities in fleets, communication networks, and planetary defenses. Engineers and strategists worked to develop more resilient systems, not simply to rebuild what had been lost, but to ensure that future expansion would be undertaken with greater foresight and care. The aliens' intervention demonstrated the importance of understanding complex systems, anticipating consequences, and respecting limits. Humans learned, painfully but effectively, that technological mastery without strategic wisdom was insufficient when facing forces that exceeded their own understanding. Amid rebuilding efforts, new forms of cooperation emerged. Colonies that had once operated independently or competitively began to collaborate more closely, sharing resources, knowledge, and strategic intelligence. The common experience of devastation fostered unity and resilience. Humans began to recognize that survival required collective responsibility, careful planning, and respect for the limits imposed by the universe. Ambition remained, but it was now tempered with the understanding that reckless actions could trigger irreversible consequences. Humanity was learning to balance curiosity and caution, innovation and restraint. The events also forced humans to rethink their relationship with the aliens, once viewed as distant observers, mysterious presences, or theoretical possibilities. The aliens were now recognized as active participants in the cosmic balance. Humans realized that their species was not the apex of intelligence or capability, but part of a broader system in which actions had consequences and where other civilizations possessed far greater knowledge and power. Respect, diplomacy, and careful study became essential tools for interacting with forces beyond human comprehension. The strikes had transformed fear into understanding, shaping a new era of interstellar consciousness and caution. As human society began to stabilize, the lessons of the devastation were integrated into every aspect of civilization. Colonization, exploration, and technological development were approached with far greater thoughtfulness. Decision-making incorporated assessments of risk, ethical considerations, and the potential impact on distant ecosystems and civilizations. Humans had survived, but survival now required humility, strategic thinking, and recognition of forces that could not be ignored. The aliens' decisive actions had left an indelible mark, shaping humanity's trajectory for generations to come. In the midst of recovery, humanity also began to study the aliens' motives, strategies, and technology. Scientists and engineers meticulously analyzed every available piece of data, trying to understand the logic behind the strikes and the capabilities of the civilization that had enforced such precision. This study was not merely academic, it was essential for survival. Understanding the aliens' perspective, methods, and intentions became a central focus, guiding rebuilding efforts, defensive strategies, and future exploration initiatives. Knowledge became a form of survival, and learning to respect intelligence beyond one's own became a moral and strategic imperative. Ultimately, the resolution of the conflict marked a transformation of humanity itself. The species had faced the consequences of arrogance, curiosity without caution, and ambition unchecked by wisdom. They had been humbled by forces far beyond their understanding, and in the process they had learned lessons that could not be taught through observation alone. Humanity emerged from the devastation altered, wiser, more cautious, and more aware of the responsibilities that came with exploration and expansion. The aliens' intervention had been devastating, but it had also preserved the species, allowing them the opportunity to learn, adapt, and survive in a galaxy filled with both wonder and danger. This phase was the culmination of years of observation, warnings, and escalating tension. Humanity had been forced to confront its limitations, recognize the consequences of ignoring guidance, and rebuild in a manner that incorporated both resilience and humility. The lessons learned during this period would shape policies, strategies, and values for generations, ensuring that the species would approach the universe with both curiosity and respect. The resolution was not the end of humanity's story, but a pivotal turning point, one in which survival depended not only on intelligence and ambition but also on restraint, awareness, and the ability to learn from mistakes. Humanity had been reduced to a fraction of its potential power, yet the species had survived. The devastation had forged a new understanding of responsibility, strategy, and the consequences of action. Ambition, once reckless, was now tempered by caution. Curiosity, once blind, was now guided by awareness of the broader cosmos. The resolution had preserved the species, but it had also left an indelible lesson. In a universe populated by forces far beyond human comprehension, survival depended on humility, foresight, and respect. Humanity had been taught a lesson that could not be forgotten, and the future of the species would be forever shaped by the events of this period. Asterisk. After the catastrophic events and the decisive alien strikes, humanity entered a period of reflection, recovery, and profound transformation. The dust of destroyed colonies still hung in the void of space, and survivors struggled to rebuild not just their technology and infrastructure, but their understanding of themselves and their place in the galaxy. Humanity had faced the consequences of unchecked ambition, curiosity untempered by caution, and disregard for forces far more advanced and powerful than themselves. The events had left an indelible mark, altering human society, thought, and values in ways that would resonate for generations. The first phase of this period was survival. Humans were forced to confront the fragility of their existence on a cosmic scale. The entire colonies had been obliterated, fleets destroyed, and critical supply lines severed. People scrambled to ensure basic necessities, food, water, shelter, and life support systems were restored in the wake of devastation. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged habitats, reroute power supplies, and rebuild communication networks. Military and scientific personnel collaborated across distances, improvising solutions in real time to prevent further loss. The threat of alien oversight loomed large, and humanity had to learn to act with precision, coordination, and foresight, recognizing that every mistake could have far-reaching consequences. At the same time, humans began to reflect on the causes of the catastrophe. Intellectuals, leaders, and scholars debated endlessly what had gone wrong, and why had humanity ignored the warnings. They analyzed the previous years of expansion, the signals from the aliens that had been misinterpreted, and the technological hubris that had encouraged reckless colonization. Universities, research institutions, and think tanks undertook exhaustive studies of the events, documenting patterns of human behavior that had led to disaster. This reflection became both a practical necessity and a moral imperative, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Human society also faced an emotional reckoning. Survivors carried trauma from the destruction of homes, loss of loved ones, and the realization that their species was far from invincible. Grief, guilt, and fear were widespread, but so too were resilience and determination. Communities banded together, sharing resources, knowledge, and emotional support. Stories of heroism, self-sacrifice, and ingenuity emerged from the chaos, inspiring others to persevere. The shared experience of near annihilation created bonds between individuals and colonies that had never existed before. Humanity was learning that survival was not only about technology and strategy but also about empathy, cooperation, and collective responsibility. During this period, humans also re-evaluated their approach to technology. The alien strikes had demonstrated that advanced capabilities alone were insufficient without wisdom, strategy, and ethical consideration. Engineers, scientists, and strategists began to design systems not merely for efficiency or speed, but with resilience, adaptability, and safeguards against overreach. Terraforming projects were reconsidered, resource extraction was approached with more caution, and colonies were designed with redundancy and long-term sustainability in mind. Technology, once a tool for unchecked ambition, became a tool for survival, reflection, and responsible expansion. One of the most important changes was in human leadership and governance. Governments, corporations, and organizations realized that old hierarchies and methods of decision-making were inadequate for the challenges they now faced. Leaders who had survived the crisis or demonstrated foresight were elevated, while others were held accountable for negligence or reckless ambition. Decision-making became more collaborative, with greater emphasis on strategic thinking, long-term planning, and consultation with experts across disciplines. The events had taught humanity that survival in a universe populated by powerful, intelligent civilizations required not only innovation but also wisdom and restraint. Humanity also became acutely aware of the aliens' presence and perspective. No longer were they distant observers or theoretical possibilities. The aliens had demonstrated clear capability and authority. Humans began to study them systematically, attempting to understand their motives, technology, and strategies. Communication, once unilateral, became a cautious two-way process. Humans learned to read signals carefully, interpret consequences, and anticipate alien reactions. Diplomacy, observation, and careful experimentation became central to human interstellar strategy. The species was no longer acting as if it dominated the cosmos. It was learning to navigate a complex, unpredictable, and potentially hostile environment. Cultural transformation accompanied these practical changes. The events of destruction and survival became central to human identity. Literature, art, and education reflected lessons learned. The importance of humility, foresight, cooperation, and respect for forces beyond comprehension. The story of humanity's near annihilation and recovery was told over and over, reinforcing values that emphasized responsibility alongside curiosity. Heroes were celebrated not only for achievement but for caution, insight, and ethical consideration. This cultural shift ensured that future generations would internalize the lessons of the past, reducing the likelihood of repeating catastrophic mistakes. Science and exploration were not abandoned, but they were approached with greater wisdom. Humans continued to explore space, but every mission was carefully planned, considering potential ecological impacts, strategic consequences, and ethical responsibilities. Colonies were developed with awareness of sustainability and interstellar balance. Technological advances were pursued, but with an emphasis on resilience, adaptability, and learning from the alien example. The species' natural curiosity persisted, but it was now balanced by a deep understanding of risk, consequence, and the broader cosmic context. Humans also developed new forms of cooperation, both within and between colonies. The destruction had shown that isolation and competition could be deadly. Shared resources, knowledge networks, and strategic alliances became essential for survival. Colonies that had previously competed fiercely now collaborated, sharing technology, expertise, and intelligence to prevent further loss. Communication networks, once designed for speed and efficiency alone, were redesigned to ensure redundancy, reliability, and protection against unexpected interference. Humanity had learned that collective effort and coordination were critical in a universe filled with unknown forces. The lessons learned extended to military strategy as well. Fleets, once symbols of pride and power, were restructured to emphasize defense, flexibility, and coordination. Offensive capabilities were balanced with protective measures, reconnaissance, and strategic caution. Humans understood that raw strength alone could not guarantee survival when faced with civilizations possessing superior technology and foresight. The experience of near annihilation had instilled a respect for strategy, timing, and the necessity of anticipating consequences before action. On an individual level, humans experienced profound psychological changes. Survivors carried memories of destruction, fear, and loss, but also resilience, ingenuity, and hope. The shared trauma created empathy and understanding across generations and communities. People began to value wisdom alongside curiosity, foresight alongside ambition, and caution alongside bravery. Education systems were redesigned to emphasize not only technical knowledge but also strategic thinking, ethics, and awareness of broader consequences. Humanity was learning, collectively and individually, that survival required balance and respect for forces beyond immediate comprehension. The aliens' continued observation also influenced human development. Their presence served as a constant reminder that actions had consequences. Humans learned to anticipate potential reactions, interpret signals carefully, and act with strategic awareness. Direct confrontation had been devastating, but the aliens' restraint offered humanity a second chance to learn and adapt. The experience fostered a sense of humility and respect, transforming humanity from a species driven purely by ambition into one capable of reflection, adaptation, and responsible exploration. In the long term, humanity began to rebuild not just infrastructure and fleets, with philosophy, strategy, and understanding. Colonies were designed to be sustainable, technologically advanced, and resilient. Systems were implemented to prevent reckless expansion and to ensure careful observation of alien signals. Humans had learned that every action in the cosmos carried consequences, and that survival depended on balance between curiosity, ambition, and restraint. The species had evolved from reckless explorers into cautious, thoughtful participants in a complex, galactic environment. The reflection extended to humanity's relationship with the universe itself. Humans no longer assumed dominance or control. They recognized that they were part of a broader system, where intelligence, power, and responsibility extended beyond their own species. The destruction and recovery had instilled a deep understanding that survival depended on respect, foresight, and learning from those more advanced. Curiosity was still celebrated, but it was now guided by knowledge, ethics, and awareness of consequences. Humanity had survived, but only because they had been forced to evolve in understanding, strategy, and humility. Philosophically, the events reshaped human values. Pride and ambition were tempered with humility and caution. Curiosity was balanced by foresight and ethical responsibility. Communities, previously focused on competition and achievement, now emphasized cooperation, shared knowledge, and collective survival. Humanity's approach to technology, colonization, and exploration became more deliberate, informed by the understanding that every action could ripple across time, space, and species. The lessons of near annihilation became embedded in human consciousness, ensuring that future generations would approach the universe with wisdom, respect, and strategic awareness. The alien intervention, while devastating, ultimately preserved the species. Humans had been given a harsh but clear lesson: ambition without caution, curiosity without understanding, and action without foresight could result in extinction. Survival now depended on learning, adapting, and evolving in both strategy and values. Humanity emerged from this period fundamentally transformed, with a new respect for limits, consequences, and forces beyond their immediate comprehension. The experience had instilled resilience, reflection, and responsibility alongside curiosity and innovation, shaping a civilization that could navigate the cosmos with awareness, humility, and wisdom. In conclusion, the aftermath and reflection phase marked the permanent transformation of humanity. The species had survived annihilation, rebuilt its colonies and infrastructure, and fundamentally altered its values, strategy, and approach to exploration. Lessons learned from destruction, observation, and alien intervention became central to human identity, culture, and strategy. Humanity had evolved from reckless conquerors into a species capable of understanding, adapting, and coexisting within a vast, complex, and unpredictable universe. The future would be guided not just by curiosity and ambition but by the profound understanding that survival required balance, foresight, and respect for forces far beyond human comprehension. Humanity had survived, learned, and changed forever, and the echoes of this transformation would shape the course of the species for countless generations.